a pleasure to listen to. And also it took a bit longer, so that means that I've got less time to speak, so I don't mind that either. There's a little bit of unfinished business. Last week we asked the question, we'll come to this week's as quickly as possible. We said Esau didn't seem to have a very fair deal. He was born red and angry and this, that and the other. So right from the word go, Esau was Esau. So the answer, and it's a lesson for all of us, is that Esau was never ever expected to be a Yaakov. He was just expected to, with what he's got and how he is, that's what is expected of a person. And that's quite encouraging actually, because sometimes you see, you get a high-flying youngster and say, come on, it goes quickly and I have to spend more time on it. Hashem doesn't expect the person to do more than they are capable of doing. But you mustn't fool yourself. Sometimes you're a bit lazy, you say, well, I can't do it. But you've got to kind of search for the emes. The emes is if one makes an effort and one goes ahead and goes forward, so that is real achievement, and nothing more is expected of the person. We have mentioned many times that the Chumash is not there was a famous writer of children's books in England. She was called Edie Blyton, but it was banned because she used to call it had the gollywogs. Gollywogs means someone who's black, who's been making fun of black people. So it wasn't accepted to have these kind of remarks. So they banned her books. But it was really good. So all the children loved it, right? One has to understand that when you learn Chumash, you're not reading a Edie Blyton fairy story. And not only that, but have you ever considered that the same Chumash that you are learning, they learn, a 5-year-old in Cheder learns, a Bar Mitzvah learns, a young older person, and the Chazon Ish, the Vilna Gaon, they learn exactly the same book. Exactly the same book. I mean, if in university, if you were to present a professor of mathematics with a math book from the elementary school, you think you're mad. It's a different standard altogether. So what is this? The Chumash, each year when you advance, you go to the Seder, it should be on a different level. So when you come across a Parshat like this one about Yaakov lying down, he has a dream, and the Pasuk says he took the stones of that place, and then it says later, and he woke up and he took the stone. So it says, I see all the stones started to argue, I want the Sadik to lie on me, and Hashem made them all into one. Now it's a fairy tale, all the little stones were all arguing. Who's ever heard of stones arguing? Huh? Got to understand it. Or, for example, Yaakov has a dream. The Torah bothers to tell you that he sees this big ladder which is stretching up from the ground right up into the sky, and the Elohim are going up and down, and Hashem appears to him and Hashem speaks to him. Well, Hashem could have spoken to him very well and very easily without the ladder. Right? What's the ladder all about? And each one, when you learn this parsha, you're supposed to put your own input into it. How do I understand it? It doesn't have to be anything too difficult. But the attitude has to be that searching and trying to understand what it's all about. And as long as it's in with the guidelines of learning Torah, and it's not heretical what you're learning, what you want to say, then it's fine. And you'd be surprised how you can suggest something and you see it later amongst the Mefarshim. I was learning with somebody this week, one of the boys, and it says to me, Yaakov woke up and and how holy is this place, and this and that and that. And he set up a monument and he poured oil on top of this monument. So he asked me a simple question. I thought Eliphaz came and took everything which he possessed. Where did he have oil from? Where did he have oil to pour on top of it? He had kind of anointed this matzeva, this monument. Where did he have oil from? Right? It's a simple, straightforward question. I'll leave you to investigate the matter and try and find out. If any of you can't sleep tonight because the question is worrying you, so you can phone me up, okay? Okay. And just by the way, I don't know if it's anybody here, but we live just my wife told me to mention this. You've got the lookout over here, and you've got American times a bit difficult than English times, and everything is nice and peaceful, and our bedroom is just then you get someone speaking on the phone, a loud voice. He thinks that he's got to shout loud enough to be able to hear it in America, right? So we'd be very grateful if you keep your voice down a little. If it's anybody here, maybe from another yeshiva somewhere, so if anybody, when you speak to Okay. It's for my Shalom bias, you might understand. My wife is going to ask me, did you speak to them about it? So the answer is yes, I did. Right. Okay. Now, back to what's this business of this ladder, this big ladder stretching on the ground and stretching right up into the sky? Anybody got any ideas what it symbolises, what it stands for? Any ideas? Right. Maybe you'll come up with an idea, but I thought maybe the ladder symbolises the human being. Human being. A human being is earthbound. We're created from earth, standing on, and the top stretches right up into heaven. A person, if he conducts his life in the proper way, he can be very earthly, bound to earth, he needs food, he needs all the different things, but his head can be stretching into heaven. We see this clearly by Anoshim Gedolim. Anoshim Gedolim, we see they're human beings, they were on the ground, but they reached these high madrigas. And Yaakov Avinu has his stream, and it's a Makom Tefillah. Be surprised what Tefillah can do. Rabbi Yashav, you've all heard of Rabbi Yashav, the undisputed one of the Gedolei Hador. I'm not in a position to say he was the greatest, but certainly one of the greatest. And he lived till the age of 102, 103. He was born after 17 years of marriage. His parents were married for 17 years, didn't have a child, and after 17 years he was born. Imagine the amount of fillers that went in that couple had. The first thing a couple do when they get married, they want to have children, and it's not working, it's not going. Done, please Hashem, day in, day out. Thousands of fillers. And what did it produce? It produced an Adam Gotten Oid, Rabbi Yashav. And you know something else, that when he passed away, listen to this, he left more than 2,000 great-grandchildren. He was born after 17 years of marriage. He was an only child. And when he passed away, God blessed him. And when he was told of the birth of a great, I don't know how many greats, that was born, so he said that his reaction was, first, Baruch Hashem, and the second reaction was his kosher edus. What does that mean? Kosher edus. You can't have a relation given evidence in court. An relation is kosher edus. He said, so many generations from where he is, at that stage, it's already become... So you can see how his mind was Torah, everything, every situation that happened. But back to this, and what about these little stones? And Rashi also says that why did he put these stones round his head? Right? In those days you had lions roaming around. Now, one doesn't really want to meet up with a lion. It's nice when you see them in the zoo, and there's a nice barricade and you see them. But to meet up with one in the wild somewhere ain't no picnic, right? So he wanted to protect himself. So Rashi says he put stones round his head to protect him from wild creatures. Simple question. A lion is hungry, looking for something to eat. And the person is lying there with a few stones round his head. It's not going to protect him. He needs something a bit more substantial than a few stones around the head. That's one problem. Another problem is, what if these stones were talking? Yeah. One said, I want the side, the other one said, the stones were arguing. Who's ever heard of stones talking? Right? There's a Gemara in Psachim, I think it is, where Pinchas ben Yair, probably some of you have been to his cave. If in Safas, you've got the Arizal's mikveh, and then there's a path which goes all the way down the hill, all the way down to the bottom, and there's a cave there which is round. I don't know whether you've been there, but next time you go on these outings, that's the cave of Pinchas ben Yair. And Pinchas ben Yair was going on a mission to redeem people who were held in captivity. He had to take the money and go around. So he came to a river, and he couldn't get over. So he stands by the side of the river, and he says to the river, I demand of you that you split to let me over. I don't think any of us, if we did this type of thing, it would have much effect. But he was a great tzaddik, but Pinchas ben Yair, and the river says to him, hey, why should I? Hashem told me to flow along, and Hashem told you to do your mitzvah, so why should I split for you? But come on, not a fairy tale. And so Pinchas ben Yair says, either you split, or else I'll decree that no water should flow along your banks. So the river got a bit of a shock. It split, and he went over. And the story goes on, they came to an inn and they wanted to give the donkey some food, and the donkey wouldn't eat it because it wasn't miced. No donkey has to keep Torah. That's another point. And that's besides the point. But the similarity that we've got here, and who's ever heard of a river talking? Right? So perhaps the explanation is that everything which Hashem created in this world, besides the physical form, has also got a spiritual entity. No blade of grass grows until a malach comes, says the Gemara, and tells it. So there is a certain life in stones and things like that, but it's a spiritual thing. It's to do with malachim. So when it talks about these malachim, stones talking, it's talking about the spirituality which is in these things. That gives us to understand that fits in nicely with the river, and it fits in. And just by the way, I think the Or Chaim asked a kasha, Pinchas ben Yair made the river split. Klal Yisrael went over Kriyas Yamsuf, whole of Klal Yisrael, right? All 3 million of them. It was a tremendous miracle. But Pinchas ben Yair did it single-handed. So what's the big deal of Kriyas Yamsuf? That's a good question, no? Isn't it? Kriyas Yamsuf, we davened Oshel Moshe, whole story. Whole of Klal Yisrael went across it. Pinchas ben Yair stood by the side of the river and he commanded the river to then split. No big deal. So what's such a big geschäft with Kriyas Yamsuf? So the Or Chaim answers, the difference is that Kriyas Yamsuf was before Kabbalas HaTorah. Before Kabbalas HaTorah, they didn't have the Koach of Torah. The Pinchas ben Yair was after. He had the Koach of Torah. With the Koach of Torah, a tzaddik can do these type of things. There's no kasha. So that's just by the way. Right, just want to towards it. We also said that sometimes the Torah writes. Torah is a guide to life. At the end of the day, our life is guided by the Torah, and the outsider thinks that if you become, you take on it's going to limit you in life. But in actual fact, right? One can live a very, very full life, a full profession. You can do whatever. Sometimes there's limitations. A Kohen can't become a surgeon because he has to cut up bodies and he can't make. Sometimes, but generally speaking, one can be a fully Orthodox, fully Yid and still carry on with all, because it's made for. Torah is really made for human beings to live by it. Now, we are created, and every single person, without exception, has got challenges. And no two people have got the same challenge. And generally speaking, we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give a person a challenge which they can't cope with, unless it wouldn't be fair. Yeah? So the Torah is a guide, and therefore in the Torah there must be some element of challenge in the actual Torah itself. And this week said that when Leah started to have one child after the other, it's an agony for a couple. It's a very even from a people, generally the whole thing, Goyim will think of having them maybe raise a family later on. Whilst we haven't got time, we haven't got this. And when they're about 30, 40 years old, they start thinking maybe they'll start having the child. Yidden are happy to have children, have large families, right? And sometimes you get a family with lots and lots of children, and you get a couple who have been married many, many years, and they live nearby. In our block of flats, for example, we've got a family who, Baruch Hashem, I'm not quite sure how many children they have, but it's quite a number, Baruch Hashem. And just opposite 2 doors, there's a lovely, lovely couple, been married many years, haven't got any children. That's a challenge. It's a challenge for that person. And it's a painful situation. Right? So Rachel, it says that Rachel saw that Leah's having all these children, and Rachel was jealous of her sister. Now anybody who knows anything about Torah will tell you you're not allowed to harbour jealousies. So why did the Torah say what she was jealous? How come Rachel, one of the greatest tzaddikas who ever lived, she gave away everything for her sister. She thought she would have to fall into the hands of Esau, right? She gave away everything. She gave away the man she loved, a whole life of ecstasy, being Yaakov's wife. And the whole story, which we haven't got time to go into now, right? And she was a tremendous tzaddikas beyond our imagination. And she did this great mitzvah, and she didn't feel that she did anything. If you would have asked her whether she'd done anything special in herself. So, but the Pasuk says, Rachel was jealous. How do you understand it? See, you can understand it. It's a challenge in the Chumash. You can understand it. She was jealous. Finished. Or, as Rashi says, not just jealous, but she thought to herself, if Leah's having these children and I'm not, she must be a greater Sadekas. She must be doing more Masim Tovim. And that's an area where not only you can, but you should be jealous in that area. So that's what Rashi says. But the simple looking at the Pasuk is challenging. Just want to end with one other thing, an interesting point. At the end, Hashem appears, after he works for Lavan for 22 years, Hashem appears to Yaakov and says, it's time to go home. So he calls his 2 wives, and he says, I notice your dad is getting a bit rough these days, and it would be wise for us to leave. It's getting a bit hot here, right? And by the way, and Hashem also told us to go. Now, why did he say the first thing? He should have just said to them, HaKadosh Baruch Hu appeared to me, and Hashem said we should go. So pack your bags and we're going. He didn't do that. What did he do? He says, here, it doesn't make sense to stay here any longer. It's dangerous. It's not a sensible thing to do. In life which is challenging, one should try and be memayet the nisayon. Make the challenge less, right? Somebody, for example, he's not very interested in learning, and his father is demanding of him, you've got to go to yeshiva and learn. He thinks, how am I going to cope? Right? So it's a challenge. So he can maybe think to himself, Israel, there's nice deep sea diving you can do there, and you can do this, and you can do that, and the sun shines, and you can have falafel. Make the challenge easier. You don't have to take the challenge on a frontal attack. That's why Yaakov says to Rachel and Leah, right, we've got to leave. Why? Because it's not healthy to stay here anymore. And also Hashem said so as well. It's also quite important that if any situations crop up where you understand that you just can't demand something which is difficult for you to do, try to express it and try to find out why it makes sense. And that makes the whole thing all that much easier. I think our time's up. Right? It was very nice that Veitzei this afternoon was a proper standard.